Well, good morning. Good Thursday morning to you on this, the 22nd day of the month of January. Dan Fagan here, broadcasting to you on KOAN, which is broadcasted in Anchorage on 95.1 FM, 1080 AM. We're also coming to you on KVNT, which is broadcast out of the Valley in Wasilla on 95.2 FM, 1020 AM. It is currently 3 degrees in Anchorage, 3 degrees in Palmer, 0 Wasilla, 3 in Eagle River, 12 in Girdwood. Winter weather advisory on the way. We're supposed to get several inches of snow over the next couple of days. So there'll be a major change in our weather. Won't be as cold, but lots of snow. Our number 569-1080, 569-1080. Email me, danfaganshow at iCloud.com, danfaganshow at iCloud.com. We are streaming on the internet, video and audio, danfagan.us, danfagan.us. The number again, 569-1080. It's good to be with you this morning. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Our governor gave a speech last night. I watched most of it. He was addressing the legislature. It was an unusual speech in that he is giving a speech last night and then again tonight. Tonight focusing on the budget, which is what everybody has their panties in a wad over. So he was very light on specifics last night, I thought, which is understandable. It's going to be interesting to watch Mr. Walker negotiate between the warring factions within our state, positioning himself as the unity or fusion candidate. He just has to be very careful. He has to tread softly, not be divisive. I did not think that his speech last night was in any way divisive compared to the president's, which was extremely divisive on Tuesday. So Mr. Walker does pretty well when he gets up there and tries not to push too many buttons. It's just a tough job. It's a tough time. You know, when you want to be all things to all people, it's hard. It's almost better to be like in a position where that, okay, here's my base. I'm going to make them happy, and the rest of them, you know, they'll just have to deal with me, which is what I think Mr. Obama has decided to do. Mr. Obama's speech Tuesday, which I could not watch in its entirety. Obviously, I don't see how any non-leftist could. But it was basically, I'll give away the farm with someone else's checkbook. That was the gist of the speech. Don't worry, everything will be free. Here's something else we can do for free. Here's something else we can do for free. And, of course, when he says for free, it's all on the 50% of people who actually pay taxes. So it's easier to be compelling and engaging when you're playing to your base, because I saw Hollis French put on he's a Facebook friend of mine. He, right in the middle of the State of the Union, he wrote, "I love this president." Well, sure you do. When you're a leftist, a socialist, and you get up there and you say the government's going to do this and it's going to do this and it's going to do that, then you're getting excited. And that's the advantage that Mr. Obama has that Mr. Walker does not have, because he has to make everybody happy because he's the unity guy. He's the fusion guy. And you can't really get up there and pander to your base because you don't really have a base. He did talk about Medicaid and expanding that. That was clearly a tip of the hat to the left. Expanding Medicaid, of course, grows entitlement culture and creates many more dependents that we've had in previous days here in Alaska. So that was clearly a tip of the hat to the Byron Malott faction of his ticket. The one thing that was so confusing to me, and I'm still waiting for a reporter to ask him this, and we're going to get the governor on the show, hopefully next week. Hopefully next week we'll have him on the show. But when he talked about the gas line, he talked about he had a meeting with a couple of the customers over in Japan. Now, this has been the main thing with Bill Walker in that he's always talked about, hey, I've got all these customers lined up. And I've got customers who want to buy our gas. And he talks about that as though the customers are going to take all the risk. The customers will finance the pipeline. The customers will make it all happen, as though the producers are irrelevant. Now, the other side of the equation, the Sean Parnell side of the equation, and we had Mr. Bailash, who was former DNR commissioner for Mr. Parnell. He said, if you let the customers drive the process, then the customers are going to want to lock in super, super low rates. That's the only reason they're going to take the risk and be involved in helping shoulder the thing to fruition. And I've never gotten an answer from Mr. Walker on that. And I'm assuming his plan is to have the state basically take most of the lead and risk 52% ownership, which would basically mean the state builds the thing and basically takes the lead. And then the customers would guarantee the revenue would come, but they would get a great deal out of it because they are shouldering more of the risk. And I guess the producers are just supposed to go along and sit there with their hands in their pockets and smile. But the problem with that scenario, as I understand it, is the producers hold the cards. They have the lease rights to the gas. And Mr. Walker has been operating under the presumption that if we build the thing ourselves and we get the customers lined up, the producers will have to give us the gas that they have the lease rights to. And I just don't see how that's possible. Now, he has backed off, Mr. Walker has, on his 52% ownership, which, again, on Friday before the election, he said, yeah, we want 52% ownership of the pipeline, which means ownership of the pipeline. Don't get fooled by the 48% left over. That's irrelevant. Now, that was on Friday before the election. Now, he's kind of backed off and waffled on that a little. So who knows? I'm so fascinated with the way he's going to be able to negotiate through this minefield of making everybody happy, not destroying the work Governor Parnell's already done to get us closer to a pipeline than we've ever been before. But when he throws out those customers that as though that's a major deal, it isn't. It is not a major deal. And so we've always had customers. That confused me. And hopefully we'll get some clarification on that this week for you. 569-1080. Give me a hotel at the airport. How do you like that? That's an interesting little thing. We'll tell you about that. A bunch of other stuff. 569-1080. Dan Fagan here. KOAN, KVNT. 6:17 in the morning. Dan Fagan here. KOAN, KVNT. Streaming live, danfagan.us. Danfagan.us. That's where you can watch the show on the internet. And listen to it there. Our number 569-1080. 569-1080. I've never understood people who cheat at sports. I don't get that. I have friends that I play golf with. And some of them are cheaters, some of them are not. Now, there's a distinction. For those who play golf, who are golfers, know what I'm talking about. Golf is such a great sport in that it's you against the world. It's literally you need it all. You need to come to the golf course with 100%. It takes 100% of your mental, physical. You got to focus. It's such a grueling sport. It's so difficult. And if you don't bring your A game, you're going to stink the place up. And that's golf in a nutshell. And that's the beauty of it. It takes 100% of what you got to be able to perform and to beat it. You're really playing against the sport more than the people you're playing against. So I never understood people who went out and golfed and then, they don't play by the rules. Now that's different than cheating. Cheating is if you're playing, because I like to compete. I love to compete. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I just love competing. It's one of my things in life. It gets my juices going more than anything. Competing. And it's one thing to just not play by the rules. In other words, if you're out on the golf course, you hit the ball, it goes into the woods. You walk up to where it went into the woods, you drop it, and you hit it again. That's what a lot of golfers do. But the rules require that you actually hit the ball from the original spot instead of walking up to where you went into the woods. That's the rules. And a lot of people will skirt the rules just because they don't know them or it's just a shortcut or they don't care. That's not cheating. That's just not knowing the rules and not understanding the game. What I'm talking about is when you hit the ball and it like hits a tree, and then when no one else is looking, you think you'll kick the ball out, from under the tree. There's actually a guy who was an Anchorage police officer, of all things, who was caught cheating in one of the amateur tournaments here. They kicked him off the course. That kind of stuff I don't understand. It's a sport. Okay, it's not. It's a sport. It's a sport. Now, Bill Belichick, who is the coach of the New England Patriots, has to be the single unhappiest human being ever on the planet. If you've ever heard him in a press conference, he literally mumbles. This is not far off. This is Bill Belichick. Oh, we had some good runs up there. I thought maybe we could have thrown the ball a little better. I mean, that is not an exaggeration of how Bill Belichick talks. And for those who know the NFL, you know that that's a dead-on impression. Never smiles, just seems as miserable as anybody. Back in 2007, he videotaped another NFL team, it was the New York Jets, and tried to steal their defensive signals. When you signal in what defense you're going to run, whether you're going to blitz or man-to-man or whatever, you have signals for that. And Belichick matched the videotape that he had with the signal caller, and so he knew what the Jets were calling defensively, and then he was able to call offensive plays based on that. And, of course, at the line of scrimmage, Tom Brady could audibilize, and we know what that signal means, so let's call play for that defense because we already know their defense. That's cheating. It is cheating in its purest form. And Belichick was caught for that, and he was fined $500,000 personally. It's a game. It's a game. I never understood that. Now, last week, each team has 12 footballs that they bring and they get checked. Apparently, they're supposed to weigh or have a certain amount of pressure, and 11 of them were underinflated. So what happens is the referee checks the games at the beginning, checks the balls at the beginning to make sure that they're all regulation, and then at the end of the game, they discovered that 11 of the 12 had been deflated. The referee says, hey, I checked them all. They were fine at the beginning. Now, the reason that the deflation of the ball is better for the quarterback is because it's easier to grip. And in rainy, cold weather, if the ball is less inflated, it's easier to grip and not fumble. So apparently, Belichick got caught cheating twice. Now they're talking, well, we need this big investigation. We got to figure out. Seems pretty clear cut to what happened to me. Now, what's the deal here? Now, here's the problem. Here's my problem with all this. And I don't know if I'm unusual. I don't know if nobody else is like me. But when I was anywhere from 6 years old to 17, 16, 6 to 17, I absolutely idolized the New Orleans Saints. I thought Archie Manning was just a god. I was a kid, and sports was everything to me as a kid. And we go to all the games. And whatever these guys did, I remember thinking in the hallways, walking through school, what it would be like to be an NFL quarterback and all this stuff. This is how my mind worked when I was a kid. I don't think I was alone. I don't think I'm alone. I know that not every kid is into sports like I was, but I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of people like me who, when they were kids, idolized NFL players, NBA players, baseball players. It was like everything to them because a lot of kids, and my nephews are the same way today, their world literally evolves around sports. They play it, their friends play it, their dads talk about it with them. It's just everything. That's the way I was growing up. And for this New England Patriot team, a team that I would imagine kids who live in Boston absolutely idolize and adore, like I did, to hear that the guy who heads up the team has been caught twice intentionally trying to cheat. And you say, well, kids need to know, don't idolize sports figures. Easier said than done. And here's my thing on the whole deal. It is a privilege to play professional sports. It is not a right. It is not a constitutional right to play professional sports. It's a privilege. And I don't think it should be based solely on your athletic ability or your coaching ability, whether you play in the NFL. I believe because this is a game that has so much influence over young people in this country, I believe there should be a code of conduct figured in to the NFL. You hit your girlfriend, you're out. You get caught with 2 or 3 DUIs or maybe 1 DUI. I don't know. But there should be a code of conduct. And just know, look, it doesn't mean you can't go on and live your life. I'm not saying Bill Belichick should go to jail. But I personally believe for the kids in Boston and frankly all over the northeast part of the United States who idolize Bill Belichick, I believe he has lost his right and his privilege, that's the word there, privilege, of coaching the NFL. You get caught cheating once, even though it's blatant and it's obvious, that's one thing. Twice? And look, he arguably may be the greatest coach in the history of the league, clearly in the top 5. But I think if the NFL had a conscience, you know how much money this league makes? Do you have any idea how much money this league makes? And I believe the NFL should say, with this great wealth that we have and this great following we have, especially from young people, that we should require everyone in our organization, from the commissioner to the owners to the players to the coaches, abide by a certain level of conduct. No, we do not want perfect people. We understand people can make mistakes. But when you're caught cheating in the very game that you've been put in as a steward over, you're the coach. I'm not sitting here trying to be judgmental and say that Bill Belichick is a bad person. That's between him and his God. But I'm trying to look at this from a perspective of how would the league react? How should the league react in light of how's little Billy, who's 7 years old, going to react to the coach of his favorite team getting caught twice for cheating? What does that teach little Billy? And I know you'd say, well, the parents should sit little Billy down and explain to little Billy that these people are all just humans and they're okay. So why does Bill Belichick get to keep cheating? Can you explain that to me, Mom and Dad? Well, little Billy, in some parts of the world, you can be a cheater and continue in your job. Well, that's a bad message. That's not a good message. And no, we don't need to have perfection out of our NFL players, coaches, and owners. But we need to have a standard. And we need to teach kids that cheating is not the way. By example. By having consequences that deter cheating in the NFL. And you say, well, Bill Belichick had to pay $500,000 the last time he cheated. Yeah, he makes $7 million a year. And he's made $7 million a year for the last 10 years. I think that $500,000, I think that's probably not going to hurt him. That's my take. 569-1080, 569-1080. Now they're talking about, what do we take a draft pick? Do we take a... Well, they're certainly not going to cancel the Super Bowl. That's worth billions. I don't understand the mindset. Here you got probably the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL, at least top three. You got a great team, and you got to deflate the balls to cheat. I don't understand that mindset. That is wanting to win too badly, is what that is. Willing to compromise your integrity just because you want to win. 629. All right, welcome back. 635, Dan Fagan here, KOAN, KVNT, streaming live, danfagan.us. Our number, 569-1080. Love to hear from you this morning, 569-1080. Streaming danfagan.us, as I said. Very, very chilly outside. 2 degrees in Anchorage, 0 in Wasilla, 3 in Palmer. Eagle River, 4 degrees. Oh, I'm sorry. In Wasilla, it's now -2. It's dropped down to -2 in Wasilla. Girdwood, a balmy 16. And a lot of snow in the forecast. How about that? Winter weather advisory. Expected 6 inches as much as. It's going to get up to 21 tomorrow. And then that's when the snow's supposed to hit. Starting about, let me take that back. About 3 or 4 today. Start with about 80% chance of snow, and it's supposed to snow all the way through most of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Lots of accumulation. So they say. So hopefully it would be nice to get some snow on the ground here. I mean, it is Alaska, right? We do want snow. 569-1080, 569-1080. I don't know what to make of this whole deflate gate. Sports is such a good thing. I think it's really good for our culture. I know it helped me. Teamwork, the whole sense of being on a team and playing for your teammates. That's a healthy thing. I think it's a good thing to teach young people that it's not just about you. And that's one of the things about football is that to be successful, you have to have a team mentality. The old saying, "There's no I in team," and it's true. I never really learned about camaraderie and sacrifice and thinking about my fellow man more than myself until I started playing in team sports. And it's a great thing. You have coaches who typically can mold young men and women through sports, teach them character, go the extra mile type attitude. And in a culture today where so many of our teenagers are growing up and watching, playing video games and not participating in sports, they're missing out on a lot, I think. They're missing out on that team concept. And you hear that a lot. I hear that a lot from entrepreneurs who are hiring kids out of college today, and it's all about me, 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 and what can I get out of it? There's just so much power in the concept of team, and that's one of the beauties of sports. And so I think I'm not one of these folks who think sports is a negative. I think it's good, and a lot of people that they abuse it and win at all costs mentality. That's not healthy, obviously. And I would assume that Mr. Belichick, coach of the New England Patriots, adopts that philosophy. Now that he's apparently been caught twice cheating. But what I think is important to remember is that the folks who make it to the elite of their sports, they owe us something for that. There's a responsibility that comes with that. And it's not just them anymore. It's not just about them. The more influence we have in life, I think, the more responsibility we have because it's no longer just about you. When people begin to be influenced by you or look up to you, especially young people, that's something very serious that I would hope that the elite athletes and coaches would take into consideration when they get to that level. And yeah, it's true that Mr. Belichick has earned the position that he is now. He's a great coach, very successful. As I said, probably one of the top 5 NFL coaches in the history of the game. But when he thinks about cheating or cutting corners, or I wonder if he thinks about that little kid who's 7 years old who idolizes him and thinks the world of Coach Belichick because he's the coach of my team. It's not just about winning. It's not just about winning, and I don't know. It's frustrating to me because I was one of those kids who, and maybe I'm more mad at myself but I idolize kids. I mean, I idolize athletes and sports heroes. I wonder how many elite athletes and coaches consider the kids that frankly without that support they wouldn't get their $7 million salary. That's about what Bill Belichick makes, $7 million a year, $7 million a year, and he still feels the need to cheat. I mean, come on. That shows you, folks. It's never about the money. One thing that my leftist friends always try to convince me of, my good friend, little Jimmy Lotsford, we used to always get in debates about this, that poverty causes crime. And poverty does not cause crime. If anything, the opposite is true. Once a neighborhood becomes dangerous, businesses leave, as do jobs. Would you want to start a new business in a part of town that's nice without any crime or in a part of town where there's lots of crime? Well, of course, you're going to take your business to a crime-free area. It's not a chicken or the egg thing. And there are billions and billions and billions of people on this planet who live in abject poverty and would never dream of stealing. Wouldn't dream of it in a million years. So when you're talking about poverty and a lot of times the left will try to tell you, well, he grew up in a bad neighborhood, that's why he has a life of crime. Now, it's a condition of the heart. It's a decision you made. Now, granted, if you grow up in a poor neighborhood, your opportunities are not as strong as if you grow up in a nice neighborhood. I'll give you that. Not everybody starts at the same place. It's not an equal playing field by any stretch of the imagination. But that's just life. Life's not fair. And for those who want to bring equal starting places for everybody. You just can't do it because we have parents, and my parents made some really good decisions in life, and as a result of that, I had a pretty good place to start. And there are a lot of kids who had parents who made really bad decisions, and as a result of that, they're starting at a much more disadvantaged place than I had to start. So what do you want to do? What do you do about that? That's life. That's how life works. And today in our culture, it's as though we want to go after the parents who make the good decisions, propelling their children to a better life. It's like that's a negative. Remember how they beat up on Mitt Romney because he was born with a silver spoon? Well, no, his dad was successful, and he gave his son a head start in life. How's that a negative? It's almost as though the Democratic Party wants to punish parents who give their kids a head start. Do you want your child to have a head start? Well, of course you do. Why are we passing laws trying to block kids from having an advantage over the other kids? There's nothing wrong with that. 569-1080, 569-1080. That's the number if you'd like to join us. Email me, danfaganshow@icloud.com, danfaganshow@icloud.com. It's a chilly one, folks. Lots of snow coming over the next couple days. Time currently 6:44. Well, good morning to you on this January 22nd, 2015. It's 6:47 in the morning. Dan Fagan here. Give me a call, 569-1080, 569-1080. That's the number. You can email me, danfaganshow@icloud.com. We're streaming video-wise on the internet. DanFagan.us is where you find us. DanFagan.us. Fagan, F-A-G-I-N. And again, our phone number. Give us a call, 569-1080. 569-1080. Let's go to Todd. Good morning, Todd.
Morning, Dan.
How are you?
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you.
I think, well, I haven't liked the Patriots since the infamous Tuck rule that, dropped the Raiders out of the AFC championship game about 15 years ago. But
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but then the videotaping, I don't know, sad. But, I think you're leaving someone out of the equation here that bears some culpability in this whole thing, and that would be Tom Brady, and also any running back or receiver who touched the football.
Yeah.
These people, this is like a person who works in an office, and their favorite pencil that they use every day. They know exactly what it feels like.
Sure.
They know, that it's deflated.
Yes.
And none of them stepped up either.
No, I agree. And there was somebody had written a column on, I think it was ESPN.com that said that, Tom Brady is the golden boy. Nobody wants to touch him, but he deserves as much blame as Belichick.
Yeah. And to turn this back toward politics, which, I love sports, but
yeah,
I like politics better. We have the same situation in the House of Representatives when people don't step up to vote out someone like John Boehner as Speaker of the House. It's a general lack of courage.
Yes.
And they believe that for whatever reason they're going to get committee positions or special favors or what have you. And so even though they probably know in their heart that he is not the most conservative or the best leader,
yes,
they're unwilling and they don't have the courage to do something about it.
Is that a reflection, Todd, of our culture? More than
anything? And it's really quite I guess concerning, because this general lack of courage that exists in our culture today. If World War II were to take place today, would we have enough men in our country to step up and sacrifice and do the things that we would need to do to protect ourselves from an enemy like Germany and Japan?
So what happened between World War II and now?
The wussification of America.
Men aren't
we
men.
We got in touch with our feminine side.
Yeah, I read the other day that this is the first generation, this generation today, that had parents that did not pass on values to the next generation. They literally just dropped the ball on that.
Yeah, part of it is the largesse of the 50s and, people pursuing material possessions after World War II. Not that was necessarily a bad thing, but it started to become the purpose in an American's life is stuff. Not patriotism, not honor, not respect, not faith, not the willingness to die for or sacrifice for a good cause. It's become all about who has the most stuff, and it's very hedonistic. And so what we have today is a lot of men who are pursuing pleasure rather than, I guess what I would consider true manly, purposes, which are husband and father and spiritual leader. And so, it's all about glory and no longer about sacrifice.
Self-glory.
Yeah, self-glory. And so, I don't know, I get concerned about the men in our country and our ability to protect and lead the people in our lives.
Here's the good news, though. Courage is so contagious, and it does not take that many. Literally, it's the Braveheart principle.
Yeah.
You know, one or two. You mean I don't know if you saw American Sniper. Did you see it?
No, I
Yeah.
haven't seen it. And is there a lot of bad language in it? Probably because it's military.
Well,
film,
there's a couple of F-bombs and stuff, but it's it's not I don't know. I thought it was okay. But the bottom line is, and I hate to focus on movies but in anyone's life, when you see someone act courageous, because it is so rare, because what you're describing is accurate with our new culture, it's so contagious. And if anything, it should give those of us who want to do the right thing, or those who want to do the right thing, it should give us more motivation to know that you can lead the way back into courage.
Yeah, no, people are starving for leaders who show courage and who step up and are willing to sacrifice and lead by example. And our media is not.
No.
And so I think people are, leaders are concerned about what the media is going to say about them. And
yeah,
that really limits their, desire to be courageous. But yeah, usually only it takes one person who's a leader and maybe two on any, team or something like that to step
That's
up
right.
and everyone else joins.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd.
Have a good morning.
Appreciate that. Yeah, no, this thing about courage is it's like it spreads like a wildfire when people see it in its purest form. There's a gal who I know who is she's in her, I guess, late 20s now, but she grew up in rural Alaska and was sexually assaulted and abused as long as she could remember. She said that as long as I could remember, there were men doing things to my body as a child that I didn't want them to do. Our uncle, her father, elders of the village. She went to her mother once and said, "Mom, I want so-and-so to stop touching me." Her mother said, "Don't you ever speak of this again. How dare you?" and slapped her. She got her first boyfriend when she was 16. He raped her. As torturous an existence as anyone I've ever heard of. This young lady, who, as I said, is now about 28, 29, is the most well-balanced, upbeat, optimistic gal I've ever met. She was the first Alaska Native ever to graduate from the Naval Academy. When you look at her today and you talk to her and you get the life that comes out of her, and you think about where she went to get to where she is today and the courage it must have taken her to find the healing she needed, to find the strength to forgive so many people who did not deserve forgiveness. She is, frankly, the most courageous person I've personally ever met. That's what we're talking about here. To go through that kind of hell and have the courage not to give up. To have the courage to forgive. To have the courage to keep fighting through your issues. She went down to Kenai Christian College for 2 years. And the guy down there, I forget his name, he's a great guy. He runs a college down there, and it's just an amazing place. It's faith-based. And so many kids who are ended up abused sexually in rural Alaska, they go to Kenai Christian College, and they transform the lives of these kids through their faith-based program. But to see that, to go through that kind of existence, and it's so easy to give up. It's so easy to hate. It's so easy to harbor unforgiveness in your heart. It's the easiest thing in the world to be bitter. It takes no effort. None. And yet this young gal has the courage to fight every day, continue to fight, continue to search for the strength and the grace to somehow find a way in her heart to forgive those people who so wronged her. I can't imagine how many lives she's inspired as a result of her courage. That's courage. Doesn't have to be with a gun on the battlefield, although that's courage too. Just not quitting. Just not quitting. Keep fighting. That's the kind of courage as contagious as any kind of courage. 569-1080. 569-1080. That's the number. Email me, Dan Fagan Show at iCloud.com. Would love to hear from you on and if you do email us, we'll put you on our email list and go to the Dan Fagan Show Facebook page. We've got almost 15,000 now. And we'd love to have you join us. Just hit the little like button there. Stay with us. Good morning. Thursday morning. Well, glad you're here. It is the 22nd day of January. Dan Fagan here, broadcasting on KON, KVNT. Our number 569-1080. Also streaming, danfagan.us. Plenty of snow on our way. Well, it is really cold out there now. It's 2 degrees in Anchorage and 0 in Wasilla. We're going to be warming up today, and here comes the snow. We're going to see possibly 6 to 12 inches up on the hillside, and then as much as 6 inches here in the Anchorage Bowl. Be our biggest snowfall since October 20th, when 3 inches fell in Anchorage. This is according to KTVA, and they say it's going to be about a 36-hour snowfall forecast. It'll take about 36 hours starting later this afternoon. So get ready for that. Again, our number 569-1080. I want to welcome now to the broadcast education activist David Neese. David, how are you?
I'm doing good, Dan. A little chilly out today, but I'm looking forward to the snow.
It is. Me too. It'd be nice just for the scenery, huh?
Yeah, well, I kind of like for Rondi to have snow.
Yes,
so
yes, that's right.
That's only a couple of weeks away, so I'm looking forward to it.
So
how are you doing this morning?
I'm really well. I don't know if you read the op-ed piece by State Representative Charisse Millett regarding the budget and the situation with the price of oil, and her main point was don't touch education, don't hurt education. Would you agree with that sentiment? Is that what we need? Do we need to?
Well, I think what they were saying is, and this just because I was watching yesterday when they were doing their availability, and their tune changed a little bit. They were asked that specific question, and they said, well, education will probably be what we touch last.
Mm-hmm.
Because we made a 3-year commitment to it, but no, it's not off the table. So that gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Gives me a little bit of hope, because when they're all saying, no, we're not touching education, it's like, you need to touch education as a third of your budget.
Right. So what do we spend now, David? Is about $2.1 billion a year in the state educating kids? It's
a little over $2 billion. There's actually, as you know, it kind of goes through a complex thing. We spend $1.3 billion on K-12 education just in the foundation formula. So that's just, basically paying for schools.
Right.
And then everything else is added on.
Yeah. And then what about the university system? What do we spend there? Do you know?
I don't know that number. That's Brad Keithley. That's when you start talking about the education.
Right.
Yeah, because they should be, in most states, they are only supported by the state by 20, 30%, and our state is close to 80.
Yeah. So now the education budget for the public school system here, it's much higher than the average state cost, correct?
Yeah. And we're not number one in the United States. We're probably number 2.
And why is that? Why do we spend so much more on education in Alaska than other states?
Probably because the people that lobby for money have done a very good job.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. And you got to remember, we're an odd duck when it comes to states because we don't have 3 tiers of government.
Right.
And so, when you were growing up, you were in Louisiana, is that correct?
Yes.
So you had parishes.
Sure.
And so you had your parish courthouse and stuff like that. They contribute part of the load towards your local school system.
But it's But when you look at the a dollar spent per child, it's still almost twice as high as the average spent by most states, right?
Yeah, and that is due mostly to the fact that we have all these add-on things that we throw in there. If you just look at the $1.3 billion that the foundation formula gives to schools,
yes,
then it's probably in the mid-30s.
And what do we get for that dollar that we're spending?
Well, we get a system that is, I think Bob Griffith said, it turns out middle-class kids that score worse than Florida Hispanic poor children in reading in 4th grade.
Why is that? Why do we get such? A, why is it that we're getting such poor performance? And B, why is it that the media never tells us this?
Well, I don't know. It's one of those things where, you were talking earlier, is when your expectation is that, They can't do well because they have a hard life.
Yes.
I think you're talking about sports, but when you're looking at things out there and you go like, all right, I just got to work harder. Your dad gave you a lift. My dad gave me a lift as far as, where he was in his place in life. And I think it just boils down to, if you have low expectations, you manage to hit them.
Talking to Dave Neese, who is an activist involving education. And David, I read I think it was the Washington Post had an article this morning about states that rely heavily on oil are really having to relook at their budget education wise and school choice as a way to save money.
Right.
Is that something we'll ever really see here in Alaska? Any kind of momentum on school choice?
There was a lot of work on school choice in the last session, and you basically came down to, there were some people that were reelected that said, no, I'm never going to vote for it. I think the thing that's confusing for a lot of people is that, school choice actually saves school districts money, because the whole amount of money does not go to the parent for them to choose the schools. They only get, like I said, $1.2 billion out of the $2 billion.
Yeah.
They're only get their section of that 1.2.
Right.
That's all they get. So, so every child, the district or whatever, would get the rest of the money. So you have more money coming into the district and less people sitting in the seats.
And David, for the life of me, I can't imagine. The only reason that you would be opposed to that would be if you're a district member or in the education bureaucracy, is the lack of control and the loss of control. Because if you were to say to them, we're going to give you fewer kids to educate, and yet you're going to still get almost as much money. Why would you be opposed to that? Why would anyone be opposed to that?
Because the teachers are going to go out and teach somewhere else, and they're probably not going to be union members. The teachers teaching at St. Elizabeth and Lumen Christi are not union members. Everybody that works for the ASD is a union member. So I'll give you an example. ASD had a population of about 51,000 children 10, 12 years ago. In October, they had 47,000.
Wow.
So they've lost nearly 4,000.
And where are those kids?
Oh, they've gone into private schools, charter schools. Some have moved. But,
Wow.
the main thing is, okay, so you're going, all right, you've lost basically 4,000 children. How many teachers have you reduced it by? Because you always see the cuts there in the springtime. Well, they've actually added 200 teachers in that 10-year period, and then they added like 40 more in the last budget cycle.
So they've lost 5,000 kids and added 4,000 kids and added teachers.
Yes.
That makes no sense.
Well, in a business model, that's like saying, okay, we've got less customers, so let's add rooms.
That is amazing.
Every one of those teachers costs you forever. I have people that give me a hard time because I'm a retired teacher, and they go, well, you're part of the problem. We're still paying for your retirement.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but well, I did my work. So
Wow.
one of the things that, probably will help people as you're working through the legislative session.
Hey, you know what, David, hold on one second.
Right.
I'm going to take a quick break. I'm continue with David Neese, who's an education activist. He'll be with us for another segment, 7:14. Well, good morning, 717. Dan Fagan here, broadcasting on KOAN, KVNT, our number 569-1080, 569-1080, streaming live, danfagan.us. Temperature in Anchorage currently 7 degrees, -2 in Wasilla, 3 degrees in Palmer, Eagle River 9 degrees, Girdwood 18. Lots of snow coming our way, they say. As much as 6 inches in Anchorage, and then maybe even a foot on the hillside, starting later today. Get our number 569-1080. We're talking to David Neese, who's an education advocate or activist. So, David, I'm sorry I cut you off before the break.
Right.
You're making a point.
I'm trying to remember what my point was.
We were talking about the why, because you're saying to the school, we're talking about education choice,
Right.
and that when you tell the school district we're going to give you fewer students to educate, but yet you're still going to get to keep some of the money. In other words, your student per dollar allocation is not going to shrink, because when you take a kid out of the public school system under school choice into a private school or homeschool or charter school, the school district still gets a bulk of the money that student they would have had to use to educate that kid, but now they don't have to educate that kid anymore.
Yeah, and then if you go to Louisiana, where Bobby Jindal did this, basically you get let's do it really simple. You get $1 if you have a kid sitting in the seat. If you got a kid in a choice school, you get 50 cents.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have a seat for him in your school.
Right. So you still get 50 cents and you don't have to educate the kid.
Yeah.
So why would anybody be opposed to that?
I think that it just comes down to, the separation between church and state. And some people are, it's like a Roe v. Wade. There's no middle on some of that stuff. But economically, when you're looking at a lack of money,
yeah,
I think Brad Keithley said it when we were down in Kenai. He says nothing motivates like a lack of money.
Yes, I've kind of taken that approach, David. I'm not really looking at this lower oil price thing as the end of the world. I think that some real good could come out of this.
Yeah, I look at it as an opportunity for the state to shake out a lot of stuff they've added on to our gypsy wagon that we have and make it so, like, what? Okay, I'll give you an example. The Department of Education has 4 main goals. Funding K-12 is one of them. That's $1.2 billion. The rest of it, which is about $300 million, testing, overlooking the finances on it, helping with like the native ANSA, the Native Science Program at UAA.
Okay.
None of that has anything to do with public school.
Wow.
That's $300 million.
Wow. So that should just be cut.
Well, do you really need 400 employees in the Department of Education checking to make sure that school money is going to school?
400 employees.
400 employees.
Now, why do we have a Department of Education on a state level?
Well, it's because when our state started, we had 4 different types of education delivery systems. Because we had Bureau of Indian Affairs schools, so you had federal money coming in. You had Department of Defense schools at the bases.
Right.
You had private and public schools in the state of Alaska. You had the state of Alaska system, and then you had independent schools. Anchorage used to be the Anchorage Independent School District.
Okay.
So they paid for their own schools.
But still, why 400 employees now?
Well, I don't know. There, in 2007, it cost about I'm trying to remember what it was. It was $90 per child to administer, the money, move it around, and all the paperwork and the forms and everything. And now it's a little over $140. So their costs went up 70%.
That's great. Why do you even need people to? The legislature appropriates the money. Just go pick up the check.
And then when we tossed this idea out to the Anchorage caucus, David Boyle tossed it out to him and says, why don't you just fund the schools directly?
Yes.
Why would you give it to a district? Because what it is right now, it's a block grant. We say, here's how much money you get because you've got this many customers.
Okay.
And we don't have any left over when we're done.
Right.
And if you were to block grant it directly to the school based on their number of customers,
yes,
every school in the Anchorage School District would be fully funded for all staff, all just janitorials, all teachers, all nurses, everything. Pays for it completely. Right now, sending the ASD, they take about 52% of that money.
52?
Yep.
Where's the rest go?
Well, some of it's into debt.
Okay.
but that's not a major part. A little under 4% goes to utilities. So when they keep telling you, utilities are going to kill us, it's the other programs. Everything else you've added on there that's optional. So, direct instruction in schools is where the money's supposed to go, but there's nobody that makes it go there. We had a good conversation with Commissioner Hanley because intensive needs kids get paid at 11 times a regular student.
You mean it costs 11 times?
Well, no, not necessarily. That's the thing that's interesting. No, they don't cost 11 times as much. They get funded at 11 times regular.
So where's the rest of the money go? And how much of that money goes?
I asked Mr. Hanley. I said, so let's say it's $5,000. So you got a $60,000 child. Does the district have to spend all that money on that child?
Right.
No. Do they have to return any of the money they don't spend? No.
So it's in the district's best interest financially to have more intensive need kids.
And he said, no, they wouldn't go do that. I said, that's the game you taught them to play. Why would they not go do that? And, of course, the numbers of intensive needs kids has gone up, and the money's not getting to them. You talk to the special ed parents, it's not getting to those children.
Well,
the legislature is trying to do the right stuff, and it doesn't get to the kids because there's nothing that mandates that dollar go to that child.
What kind of increase have we seen in the number of kids who are declared intensive needs, and over what period of time?
Since they passed because it went up, it was triple, and then it was 5, and then it's 11 over a course of about 4 years.
And this is the state government.
This is part of the foundation formula.
Okay.
And so the number of children in the classification went up about 100 kids, which just as they kept looping up the amount.
Over what period of time?
About 5 years.
So it was 5 years ago when they increased it to 11 times the appropriation for intensive need kids, and we over the last 5 years we now have 100 more than we used to have.
That is correct, and so we asked, does that mean there's more coming into the system? Are there more moving up here from a different state? What's the deal? They said they didn't know.
How many intensive needs kids do we have statewide? Do you know that number?
I believe the number is under 2,000.
Under 2,000. So it used to be about 1,900. Now it's about 2,000.
Yeah, roughly. I mean, it was very consistent all the way until they raised the money.
Now, intensive needs, what's the criteria for that? Does it?
They have to have a severe physical disability.
So it's hard to fake that.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you go in a regular school population, when you and I were in school many moons ago, about 4% of the population would have been classified as special ed.
Right.
And about 1% of that 4%, in other words, 1%, so 1 out of 4 children would be people that you would normally not have in school. They're in hospital beds.
I see. We're talking to David Neese, who is an education activist. So do we know, have we ever seen any kind of research on the percentage of the money allocated to the districts for the special need kids, which is 11 times more than the average student? What percentage of that money actually goes to the intensive need kids?
According to Commissioner Hanley, they don't track that.
Now,
I said, hold on. Yeah, I go so you give them a plate full of money and you don't make sure that plate full of money goes to that kid? No.
Well, that's unbelievable. So
remember, it's a block grant. It's a blocked grant. It just says you have that many kids. Okay, here's this big pile of money. You get to use it. No, you don't have to use it for those kids. It's just intended to go.
And it's 11 times the average allocation.
It was 3 times for pretty much 45, 50 years.
Right.
And the legislator was responding to districts saying some of these kids are costing us a lot of money. And so they said okay, and they upped it over a course of a couple of years from 3 to 11. So when you're looking at it, as a budget item, the formula is obviously going to have to be adjusted. But the main thing is, if I give you $100,000 to spend on a kid that has really, really intensive needs, I expect you to spend $100,000 on a kid.
Is it true that the average student per cost is about $17,000 right now?
Yeah, all in cost. Now that is with the debt reimbursement program.
So it wouldn't be 11 times that number.
No, it would be 11 times the 5,000.
5,000. Okay, so you're talking about $60,000.
Correct.
And they can't tell you how much of that actually goes to that special.
Well, it's not earmarked to go to that child. It's earmarked
Wow.
to go to the district, and the district can use it at their discretion.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
it's a weird system that way.
well. It seems to me, and I don't mean to be super cynical here, but it seems to me that's by design.
Well, I'm pretty sure, this is the way most states do it.
Yeah, hide the money.
Most states did not just lose 40% of their income.
No. Wow.
So,
Well, that's some great information, David. I appreciate you joining us today and keeping us up to date on this kind of stuff.
yeah, and I'll check back with you in a couple of weeks, and we'll
Good.
see what's moving through the legislature.
Thanks,
How's that
David.
sound?
Appreciate
All
that.
right.
That's Dave Neese. He's an education activist. Very interesting stuff. That's amazing. 11 times the allocation for an intense needs. And I understand that, some of these kids are in pretty bad shape. I've taken many tours of the Anchor School District, and when you go to the intense need classroom, it typically takes an adult per child. I understand that, and it's very difficult. But yeah, there's just not enough accountability in the system, folks. And as long as the teachers union have the stranglehold over the education system that it does, you're not going to see reform. You're not going to see accountability. You're not going to see sensibility. You're going to see one thing: we need more cash. And don't ask us how we use it. And don't ask us why our schools in Alaska are a miserable failure. It's none, yeah. We just need more cash. It's at the feet of the teachers union. That's where it ends. That's where it begins. And we need to bust it. We need to become a right to work state. We need to have more school choice. 569-1080. 569-1080. Dan Fagan here at 729. 7:35 in the morning. Good morning to you, Dan Fagan here, broadcasting on KOAN, KVNT. Our phone number, 569-1080, 569-1080. Streaming live, danfagan.us. .us is how you get us on the internet. Officials with the National Weather Service say they expect this afternoon in most areas a big snowstorm come through our area in two bands, lasting until Saturday morning. Up to 13 inches of snow, covering a wide swath of south central Alaska, including Anchorage, the peninsula, and the valley. 6 inches in Anchorage, up to 13 inches on the hillside. Again, it'll start this afternoon, they say, and last through Saturday morning. So get ready. Here it comes. 569-1080. Love to hear from you on this Thursday morning, the 22nd day of the year 2015. Our number, 569-1080. 569-1080. Let's go to Tom. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. Good to talk to you again, sir.
Thank you.
You know, I have in my wallet right now about, I guess, 6 or 7 licenses, certificates, cards, you name it, that I have to produce at any given time. Depending on what project I'm on, I have to produce them at the request of either a city, state, or a federal official, which I don't have a problem with. And on my desk, on my computer, on the right screen, I have about 20 different icons that are forms of some sort that I, at any given time, I need to print out and produce and show some sort of official, whether it's city, state, or government. And I don't have a problem with that. But my point is, I'm trying to make is that there's so much regulation on me running a business. It's so difficult and costly for me to run a small business, and yet the school district can get $1 trillion handed to them by me and you, and they don't have to produce a darn thing to anyone.
It's so true.
The taxpayer who gets, let's see, what's a nice way to put this? Just, screwed so bad. And the small businessman like me,
so true,
has to struggle just to make ends meet, to I have to produce everything, I have to prove everything, I have to justify every move I make, and the school district, who's supposed to work for us,
yes,
gets to hide anything.
Yes,
can tell us, I don't feel like answering your question at any time. That they can do that. It's unbelievable how much the government is so dead set against the small businessman.
It is,
or woman, or what,
Tom, it is such a glaring contrast. The Anchorage School District gets paid 11 times per student when they have intense needs students than the average student, and they don't have to answer where that money goes. And yet they turn, not the district, but the government turns around and treats entrepreneurs like yourself as though you are hardened criminals. They don't trust you. You got to have a certificate to have the right sink and the right bathroom. I mean, it's unbelievable how government looks at the entrepreneurs in this country and micromanages you guys to the point it almost kills you.
Do you remember
Go ahead.
Well, do you remember the bumper sticker that says, you can something about try to get a building permit in Anchorage compared to getting welfare or food stamps. But,
right.
That's not even a funny joke, because it is the absolute truth. In defense of the guys down there at the counter in the city, I got to tell you, they treat us really good. And
yeah.
They're not the ones that are creating this bureaucracy. I suppose if they had their way, if the guys at the building safety had their way, we would have about 1/10 the amount of regulations. It would make their job easier. city would be so much better. But
well, Tom, let me ask you this: these regulations and laws and paperwork and all this stuff that you're describing, what percentage of that is on a city level and on a state level and a federal level?
okay, that's a really good question. That would all depend entirely, in my line of work as a mechanical contractor, that would entirely depend on the percentage of work that I did, say, in the city of Anchorage versus a gnome project that I'm doing, which is a state project, versus another project on Fort Greely, which is the federal government, or even on base. I don't have to worry about the city when I'm on base. I have to worry about a different sort of nightmare, the Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
And any mechanical contractor listening to me knows exactly what I'm talking about regarding the nightmare scenario. But I would have to say that if I'm working, as an example, in the city, I would have to say that 85% of my regulation would be from the city, and still 15% would be from the state of Alaska. If I'm working in, say, Nome, the city of Anchorage they have nothing to do with that. The city of Nome, which I think almost all of the city of Nome is actually regulated by the state of Alaska,
okay,
or a native corporation, which the native corporations are a dream to work with versus the Corps of Engineers. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. It depends on the job. But I guess my question would be more direct in that which of the three entities I described, federal, state, city, let's just assume we're talking about Anchorage, which of those need the most reform when it comes to over-regulation and over paperwork and all that stuff?
Wow. Man, you don't have enough time for me to think about this one. I guess I would have to say the federal government, because the Corps of Engineers the federal government has got, let's put it this way, if you have a project that costs the taxpayers, you and me, $100,000, and you get the federal government involved, that $100,000 project is going to cost you $6 million. Perfect example. There's a bathroom. There's a bathroom a remodeled bathroom, boys and girls bathrooms on base. Their estimated cost is $1 million. We're talking about a bathroom, for goodness sake.
On Elmendorf?
Yes.
One bathroom, $1 million remodel.
One bathroom. The estimated remodel is the estimated project cost. You get this project cost when you bid a job. You get a project cost. The estimated is $1 million. I'll bet you 11 cents. That's probably what I have left after paying our quarterlies. that project will cost 30 to 50% more, just because they estimated that at $1 million. Wow. And we're talking about a bathroom. And I'm telling you, I've looked at this project. It's a pretty darn simple job. If I was to run this out in the valley, say, for a private person, Costco warehouse, it would be 300,000 probably.
Wow.
Maybe two and a quarter.
Wow.
But the government, it's on the government.
Yeah.
It's on the base. The government's involved, and I gotta tell you, I don't believe I'm exaggerating one bit.
Tom,
and I'm sure there's plenty of contractors that would agree with everything.
Great information, and unfortunately, I'm out of time. Thanks so much for your call. 744. 747. Good morning to you. Dan Fagan here on KOAN, KVNT, streaming live, danfagan.us. Our number, give us a call, 569-1080, 569-1080. Anchorage right now, 10 degrees. Wasilla, 0. Palmer, 3 degrees. Eagle River, 12. And in Girdwood, it's 18. Couple of bands of snow are going to be hitting us late this afternoon, according to the National Weather Service. They expect the snowfall to begin this afternoon in most areas, move through the region in 2 bands, lasting until Saturday morning. National Weather Service issued a winter weather advisory this morning, stretching from western Kenai Peninsula north to the Matsu Valley, east to Copper River Basin. That, of course, includes Anchorage and the Matt Valley. Could get up to 13 inches up on the hillside, 6 inches here in the Anchorage Bowl and in the valley. So here it comes. 2 bands, not just one. It's a twofer. 569-1080, 569-1080. You have any thoughts on Governor Walker's speech last night? If you heard it, I'd like to hear from you. 569-1080. He was giving his State of the State. Tonight, he'll give his budget speech. He decided to give 2 separate speeches because the budget, he thought, deserved extra attention. That's the big thing everybody's talking about. I like what I think it was David Neese said earlier in the broadcast, that there's some good that can come from these budget restraints. And by the way, let's just, for the record, we do not have a budget deficit. We have a shortfall. We would have to spend about $70 billion this year to have a budget deficit. So let's make that clear. Let's get our language correct. We got about 70 billion in the bank. I don't know what it is with all the permanent fund and all the accounts and all that. So we're nowhere near a deficit. It'll be many years until we're in deficit spending because we got lots of cash. We're very wealthy. But we're spending more than we are taking in for this year, $3.5 billion. And we have to tighten the belt. I think that's good. I think that's a great thing. We're spending so much money in the state. Let's cut back. It's a great idea. We have 300 people. Was it 400 people in the Department of Education? Why? What do they do? What do the 400 people who work in the State Department of Education possibly do? I would like to sit down with every one of them and just say, what do you do? What do you do all day? You're not teaching the kids. That's done in the classroom. The Anchorage School District is loaded with bureaucracy, much more than your average school district. So what do these 400 employees in the State Department of Education do? Honestly. We are going to get the commissioner on and find out what does his department do. I can't imagine. 569-1080, 569-1080 if you'd like to join the broadcast. 569-1080. Email me, danfaganshow@icloud.com. danfaganshow@icloud.com. Let's go to Tom. Tom, you're on.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to the speech last night, and then as Governor Walker made certain statements, I thought, okay, that's the lead-in, and now he's going to deliver something substantial that we can really grab onto.
Yeah.
Well, he made quite a few statements, but there was nothing substantial that I could grab onto afterwards, even though he had some great openings, like the power problem that we have throughout the state. You know, we're paying a lot for energy.
Yes.
Throughout the state of Alaska.
Right.
And he said, we're going to solve that. And in the end, his solution was we're going to turn down the thermostats in state buildings. Yeah, wait a minute. We have 7 electrical utilities here in the rail belt.
Yeah.
Where we only really need 1.
Right.
We could deliver the power cheaper, more efficiently, if we had 1 agency or 1 set of management directing that, and we would still have a very small power operator as compared to the lower 48.
Well,
it's just and then he should have said, and look at Donlin Gold.
Yeah,
they're going to deliver natural gas to the Bethel area for the first time ever. Here's a private company that are going to
build their own gas pipeline.
Building their own gas pipeline, and they're going to allow takeoffs for the villages as they go by.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the game changer.
Yes,
and then he's going to stop the mega projects.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Some of those are game changers, and they're very small amounts of money in comparison to what we spend every year on the operating budget. The operating budget's where we have a problem.
That's right. Well, let me ask you a question,
Sure.
Tom. Just a generic question. Who is Bill Walker?
Oh, I don't know. Bill Walker, he's like any other group of or number of people. We were watching that, and my wife was kind of watching, and she says, God, he sounds just like you, when he started out.
Yeah.
Said he has all these life experiences, and he's done all these things.
Yeah.
And she says, but then at the end of the day, you have ideas as to what we should do to fix these problems.
Yeah.
And he's still talking about when he grew up in Valdez.
Well, I'm not getting a good sense of what he wants to do.
Well, he wants the gas pipeline, and he's been talking about the gas pipeline since the 70s. And I applaud that, but there's a lot of other parts that we have to look at in the state of Alaska, like education you were talking about. Why do we have 400 state employees dealing with education? They don't actually teach anybody.
I can't imagine what they do every day.
And that's just one. We have 25,000 state employees that report to the governor. When Sean Parnell took over, it was 20. When Sarah Palin took over, it was 16.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just in the last 10 years.
Right.
I think we could go back to the 16 today.
Oh, sure.
And never really miss anybody.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what Mr. Walker's all about, because you kind of get a sense. You knew what Frank was about. You knew what Sean was about. You knew what Sarah was about. I can't figure this guy out.
Well, and he's been a Republican his whole life.
Yes.
And then to become governor, he changed his party allegiance to independent.
Yeah.
And he got married to a Democrat. Boy, I don't know if I could look at myself in the mirror in the morning, because, if I've told everybody I am a Republican,
yeah, for,
what is he, 67 years old?
Oh, he's not that old, I don't think.
I thought he was 67.
I thought he was in his early 60s.
But, whatever it is,
yeah,
he's looked in the mirror for that long and says, I'm this.
Well,
but today he wakes up and he says, I'm somebody else.
Well, I can't figure out the embracing Obamacare with the expansion of Medicaid.
And that's something that, it doesn't cost us any money now.
Yeah.
But by 2020, we would have to pay 10%.
Right.
And the federal government doesn't have a lot of money that they can spend. And they're going to stick it all on us.
Well, of course they are. And it creates dependence. And then, the killing of Pebble Mine, the Kinnickinnick Bridge out of the question, all this stuff. And I'm looking for the Republicanism in them. I'm not seeing the Republicanism in them.
Well, and what we need to do is build that infrastructure so that then the state doesn't have to do it. Somebody else does it.
Yeah.
And, and what we need to do is, okay, we have 25,000 state employees. We actually have about 25,000 municipal or other government local employees in the state too.
Is that right? 50,000 total non-federal?
Well, non-federal.
Wow.
And then we have the school districts.
Yeah. Oh, that doesn't include the...
doesn't include the school districts. And and so our problem is we have way too much government.
Yeah, we do.
And not near enough people that will go out and roll up their sleeves on a daily basis.
Are you like me? Can you see some good coming from these low prices? That we're going to wake up and start trimming?
Oh, yeah. I think from time to time you need to kick somebody in the pants and say, hey, you need to reassess how you do things.
Yes.
And I think it's good. We went through this in the 80s, went through it in the 90s. You remember when Frank Murkowski became the governor, and Fran Ulmer was going to institute an income tax immediately
with a friend Andrew. With a friend Andrew, he was behind it.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah.
And Andrew and Fran. Oh my God.
Yep.
And he may be our mayor.
Yep.
And what kind of taxes is he going to institute here in Anchorage? Where the solution is, like the last caller was saying, get government out of our way, and we could probably get to work.
Easily. Thank you, Tom.
Have a good day. Take care.
Appreciate it. Dan Fagan here, 758. Well, good morning. 6 minutes past 8 o'clock on the 22nd day of January, Thursday morning, 2015. Dan Fagan here on KOAN, KVNT, streaming live, danfagan.us. 12 degrees currently in Anchorage, zero in Wasilla, 3 degrees in Palmer, 10 in Eagle River, a balmy 18 in Girdwood. Snow on the way, 2 bands of it coming sometime this afternoon, south central Alaska. Could get up to 13 inches. They say it's going to begin to snow this afternoon and then continue through Saturday morning. We'll see. Our number 569-1080. We learned something new today, that the Department of Education, the Alaska Department of Education, has 400 employees. I honestly for the life of me, cannot imagine what any of them do. So I went to their website, and I'm just kind of looking around. Here's one department within the Department of Education. It's the Alaska Council on the Arts. It sits within the Department of Education. So what does the Alaska State Council of the Arts do within the Department of Education? Well, they surveyed the school districts to make sure they have enough art, and how arts education was included as a part of a high-quality, comprehensive education in our state. The data shows that we have some gain in access to arts education for some Alaska students. We are no longer on thin ice, rather. We are beginning a new venture to provide our youth with an artist-rich education that will equip them with the creative and innovative thinking required to succeed in the 21st century workforce. So here you got the Alaska State Council of the Arts, the ASCA, within the Department of Education. I hope that that department is no more than one person. It could be 15. Who knows? There's 400 of them in the whole department, so you got to spread them out. They're currently engaged in strategic planning that will guide us to work for the next 5 years. The data from the most recent survey and the reported recommendations will inform us as we go forward with arts education, as we work to close the opportunity to gap for students in Alaska. We welcome your feedback on this research, including the ways we can support community efforts in the education of Alaska students, as it will help us strengthen our strategic vision of the venture for Alaska's youth. And then it gives a number you can call. I have some advice. Go away. We don't need you. We don't need the Alaska State Council on the Arts working within the Department of Education when the price of oil is $48 or whatever it is. Ladies and gentlemen, there is so much waste in state government. There is so much waste. Did you hear what Tom said earlier? When Palin took office, there were 16,000 state employees, and then we went to 20. Now we're at 25 or 24,000. Actually, I think Frank Murkowski was 16,000. Palin brought us to 20. Parnell brought us to 24,000. We could easily go back to 16,000 employees. Wouldn't break a sweat. I embrace the lower price. I think it's good. It neutralizes despots like Vladimir Putin, some of these Middle Eastern countries that hate us. They have less money. Communist countries like Venezuela, they have less money. And so we go back to 16,000 state workers instead of 24,000. Because keep in mind, when you hire a state employee, you bought them for life. You will have to take care of them cradle to grave till they die because of the unions. So we lose 5,000, 10,000 state employees. Man, I'm telling you. You say, well, what about those poor people? They'd be much happier in the private sector, where there's accountability and where a dollar does not go to die. Look, I'm not saying state employees are bad or incompetent. What I am saying is that the environment in which they work breeds mediocrity. It's the system that's set up to look the other way if someone can't cut it. And if you can't cut it, you're covered because the union's got your back. So you got to keep hiring more people. You can't fire anybody. There's no firing in state government. And those of you who work in state government, you know I'm right. Unless you come to work with cocaine dripping out of your nose, spilling onto your shirt, you're not going to get fired. You know I'm right. Come on now. I know you may be angry with me because I'm picking on you, but you know I'm right about that. The union's got your back. So to have this behemoth, monstrous entity called the Alaska State Government, first thing I do, get rid of the Department of Education. What is the Department of Education, the 400 people who work in that, what do they do? You don't think the Anchorage School District knows how to incorporate art education into their system? They need you to go do surveys on it and then report to them. What is that all about? Honestly, what does the Department of Education do? They don't teach. They don't deal with any kids. What do they do? We're going to get his name. What is his name? Hold on a minute. Who's Hanley? Commissioner Hanley. We're going to get him on here. Not this week, next week. And we're going to say, Mr. Hanley, I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you do or what your 400 employees do. And now that the price of oil is down to below 50, do you think maybe you could we could just get rid of your whole department? I think each district can figure out on its own how to implement art education into their curriculum. And I never got art anyway. You want to talk about a Neanderthal? All right, here I am. I don't even understand art. I don't get it. You know, I look at a picture, I think, yeah, that's nice. Okay, fine. It's got colors. It's framed. Whatever. It's a mountain. I don't know. My thing, if the private sector, if the free market doesn't support it, then forget it. I'm sorry, ma'am, but your picture, if you've got to get government taxpayer money to supplement you to paint your picture because nobody wants it, and the only way you can paint your picture is if you get taxpayer money, I'm sorry, I would have to ask you to go get another job and then do your painting as a hobby because the free market doesn't supply it or doesn't support it. Let's let the free market decide. Otherwise, you're just going to have government picking winners and losers. The reason the NFL is thriving is because people like to watch it. It's the free market. Give it a try. 814. 8:17, good morning to you. 22nd day of January, 2014. How about that? Year's just moving right along. Snow's coming, lots of it. Couple of big bands of snow showers supposed to hit our area Thursday afternoon. That's today. And then snow through Saturday morning. Could be up to 13 inches. 10 degrees currently in Anchorage, 0 in Wasilla. Palmer's 3 degrees. Eagle River 10, Girdwood 18. Dan Fagan broadcasting to you on KOAN, KVNT, streaming live, danfagan.us. And we are also streaming on, danfagan.us. That's all you need to know. Our good friend Keith Montauk over at Specialty Truck and Auto. Gosh dog it. If you need a mechanic you can trust, that you know you can trust, he's your guy. He's been in business a long time. They're right across the street of the Long Branch Saloon off of Habit. And I just love Keith. I talked to him this morning. He's such a good man. And he will take care of you. He will hook you up. He will hook a brother up, as they say. So give Keith a call and make an appointment. He might be able to give you a ride back to work. His team will if you call in advance. They can't do that every time, but most times they can. Keith Montauk, Specialty Truck and Auto, right across the street from the Long Branch Saloon off of Abbott. Here's the telephone number. 349-1637. 349-1637. I'm just fascinated by this deflate gate. Now here's the very latest. We're talking about the New England Patriots playing the Indianapolis Colts in the AFC Championship game. 12 balls. Each team is responsible for their own balls. And 11 of the 12 balls that the Patriots had were deflated. And the reason that they would be deflated, the advantage of that, the upside of that would be that it's easier to throw a deflated ball in cold and wet weather. It's easier to carry a deflated ball, to grip it in cold and wet weather. And the accusation is that the Patriots cheated by deflating their balls below the allowed standard. A Patriots coach today has come out and said he didn't know how the footballs became deflated during the game. Belichick declined to answer questions after saying he knew nothing about the accusations that his team cheated with underinflated balls. The NFL is investigating. Here's Belichick's quote. I had no knowledge of this situation until Monday morning, who said he was shocked to learn the news. He said, I would say I've learned a lot more about this process in the last 3 days than I knew or have talked about it in the last 40 years that I've coached in the league. I had no knowledge of the various steps involved in the game balls and process that they went through. Belichick did not specify who in the Patriots organization was responsible for the underinflated balls or absolve anyone besides himself of potential wrongdoing. Belichick says he sometimes hears quarterbacks, kickers, and others talk about their preferences when it comes to the ball. Belichick said, I can tell you, and they will tell you that there is never any sympathy from me whatsoever on that subject. Zero. Patriots quarterback Tom Brady is expected to answer questions later today. Belichick says the Patriots going forward will inflate balls to a safe level to prevent them from dropping below allowable air pressure during games. Here's Belichick's quote, we will take steps in the future to make sure that we don't put ourselves in this type of situation again. Now, of course, you remember that Mr. Belichick was caught cheating red-handed, hand in a cookie jar, videotaping the defensive signals of the New York Jets, which would allow him, obviously, to know the calls that the defensive calls that the Jets were making before the play, which put his team at great advantage. He was fined, Bill Belichick was at that point, this is 2007, $500,000 for that, which is a lot of money. Actually, no, it was $50,000. Excuse me. He was fined $50,000 for that. Now he makes $7 million a year, so wasn't that big a deal, I guess, to him. Although 50,000 is 50,000. So there is a record here. There is a precedent for Mr. Belichick of at least once before he's been caught cheating. If you know Bill Belichick at all, if you know sports, if you know the NFL, he's an odd duck. He mumbles. He doesn't, the guy who's probably one of the top 3 coaches in the history of the game, he doesn't exude much confidence. He literally just kind of talks like this. You just barely understand what he's saying. He just talks very low. He never smiles. He's never optimistic about anything. And just very quiet. And he's like a guy who you would think, has never accomplished anything in his life. So he's an odd bird. It's sad. It's sad that if he felt like winning was more important than his integrity, that's a sad state of affairs, isn't it? I mean, here, what more does this guy have to prove? He's just one of the best coaches there ever was. And I would think after he was caught red-handed cheating in 2007, he'd have been Mr. Johnny Clean, right? And maybe he was. Maybe this is not his fault. Maybe it's the equipment manager who, Tom Brady kind of nudged him and said, hey, do me a favor. Deflate these balls a little bit. Who knows? But, the buck stops with the coach, right? He's the coach. He needs to know, what's going on with his team. And look, the Patriots were going to beat the Colts anyway. They won 45-7. It's not like the Colts had a chance. The Patriots are a good football team. They're a very good football team. They're solid all the way through. And Tom Brady is one of the top quarterbacks. I think he's probably number 3. I would say it'd be Joe Montana, Peyton Manning, then Tom Brady. That'd be my list. But to say that you're gonna deflate balls like that, it's one of our callers earlier at 569-1080. If you want to weigh in on this, 569-1080. One of our callers earlier brought up the very good point that, hey, what about Tom Brady? He had the most to gain by having a ball that it would be easier for him to throw, even if it was an illegal ball. So, it's just one of those things you're just sad about. You wish people wouldn't lose perspective on life like that, winning at all costs. And I understand people put pressure on themselves. People can concern themselves about their legacy and how people perceive them. I'll tell you, folks, oh, man, if I had a pill that I could take that would allow me the strength and the power to stop caring about what people thought of me, I would take that pill in a heartbeat. I struggle with that. I'm telling you, heart to heart here, it's difficult for me to not care about what people think about me. And I try, and sometimes I'm successful. Many times I'm not. But so many times when I get myself in trouble in life, it's because I'm worried about what people think about me. And it'll cause me to do things I shouldn't do. It's such a short-sighted thing. And you got a guy like Bill Belichick, assuming these stories are true. Highly regarded coach. Definitely the best coach in the game today. Definitely the best coach coaching today. And yet he has felt the need at least twice. We know for sure once, probably twice, to cheat. Why? Worried about his legacy? Worried about other people thought of him? Well, I can't lose. People will look down on me. Honestly, man, that's a pill I would take in a heartbeat. Wouldn't that be how much more fun would life be if you could go through it honestly, genuinely, not caring what other people thought about you? Got an old junky car? Deal with it. 50 pounds overweight? Deal with it. I mean, whatever it is that you try to impress people with, I don't care. I am who I am. Wouldn't that be a great way to go through life? I'll tell you, my sister Mary, she's like that. She doesn't care. And she loves life. She's not out to impress. She's not trying to keep up with the Joneses. She's just into her family, her kids, her husband, and she just loves life. And it's so pleasant to be around her. She never tries to impress you. Never tried, not the least bit braggadocious. She doesn't care. Oh, if I could have her teach me that. Oh, would I love to be like that. You don't like the way my hair looks? Don't care. You don't think I'm smart? Doesn't bother me. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, honestly, to walk in that every day. Honestly, not caring what other people thought of you. I can't imagine a better life. I can't, because that's all. You know, there's so much of the grief and the worry that we have in life is, well, what will people think of me if? So many things we don't try in life. The reason we don't take risks that pay huge dividends. Well, what if I fail? And then what will people think if I fail? The power of not caring about what other people think of you. Oh, someone, please make a pill. I'll take that pill in a heartbeat. Our number, 569-1080. 569-1080. That's the number. You're listening to Dan Fagan on KOAN, KVNT. 8:35. Good morning, Thursday morning, 22nd of January. Lots of snow coming our way, they say. A couple of big waves of storm coming through our area, south central, up to 13 inches starting this afternoon through Saturday morning. That's what they're predicting. I cannot verify nor vouch for the National Weather Service, but I'm telling you what they're telling me. 569-1080 is Stan Fagan here on KOAN, KVNT. Email me, danfaganshow@icloud.com. My number again, 569-1080. Governor Walker gave his State of the State last night. He's going to give his State of the Budget tonight. I watched most of it. I like Bill Walker. I do. I like him personally. There's something about him that I'm attracted to. I don't know what it is. I think at his core, he's a good fella. I do believe that. And I know there are a lot of people who are very skeptical. They view him as anything to get elected type of fella. Those in the conservative movement, a lot of them are very cynical because he joined team with the left. Yeah, I don't know about all that. I don't really care about all that. I want to know what he's going to do. I haven't been able to figure him out as far as what he's really all about. But there's something about him. I just don't know what it is that I like. And it's always been there. I've always liked the guy. And I've had interactions with him. I've had meals with him. We've had him on the show. Had him on a little TV show, the radio show. Had him on this show. And I've just always liked him. Never really saw eye to eye on a lot of stuff. But there's an intangible about him. And, last night he spoke, and really not much, about 40-minute address to the legislators, and nothing really stood out. I'm trying to figure out, okay, who's you going to try to make happy? The leftists like Beltrami and Byron Malott, or the business community? We pretty much know where he stands on the producers. I think he's pro oil and gas. I don't think he's pro-producer. I think he's angry at the producers, the three big ones, Conoco, Exxon, BP. Heartbreaking beyond words that he's anti-Pebble and anti-Connect Our Bridge and any kind of mining. It seems like it. That's heartbreaking, but we don't know. You just never know. I know there's a rally today at the Capitol, a pro-life rally. Most pro-life governors will attend these. He's not going to. He's going to send a statement supporting their cause. So, what do you make of that? I don't know. I'm just telling. I know I sound like a woman here. I'm sorry about that, but it's just a gut feeling. It's just a gut feeling, and I can't explain it. I don't really like it. I don't really like, obviously, expanding Medicaid, all that stuff, embracing Obamacare. It scares you. I'm going to tell you my suspicion. It's the one thing that stood out at the speech last night. When he starts talking about these Japanese customers, that's always been his mantra on this gas pipeline. We'll let the customers build the thing, and the producers won't be involved. They'll just have to give us the gas. And I just don't understand that, because the other side of the equation, 569-1080. By the way, give us a call if you got a second. 569-1080. Phone there, Brian. If the customers drive the process, then they're just going to want to get the cheapest gas, and that's the problem. 569-1080. Hi, who's this?
Oh, this is David, Dan.
Hey, David, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm well.
Good.
You're on. What's going on?
Well, I listened to the Governor Walker's speech last night, and what impressed me was the lack of specifics. But when he talked about education, he gave two great examples of the success stories in education, and those both had to do with sports. Not that sports is not important, but we need to talk about how poorly these schools are doing here in public schools in Alaska. One had to do with his examples. One was a wrestler who won an outside contest, and another one was a decathlon athlete.
Right.
But he never mentioned the failing schools in this state and what our state Department of Education has failed to do.
Right.
The other thing was, he brought his examples of small business successes, which were great examples, actually, was, the Alaska Brewery.
Yeah, yeah.
And the growing of our super sweet carrots up in the valley.
Right, right.
So it appears as if, we want to follow the barley farm example and start agriculture and supporting that with subsidies by the state.
So,
and maybe exporting Alaska government beer.
Well, I know he's very loyal to unions.
Yes.
So I'm assuming he's not going to be open to any kind of school choice legislation. Is that fair?
I wouldn't make that assumption
Okay.
because the fiscal which we're in right now, and it looks like it's going to continue. And if it does, we're going to have to start saving some money and pulling back money from the public education system.
Yeah.
Now, if I could show him a way to save money in public education, make it a win-win with school choice,
Yeah.
I don't think he could discount that.
But how would he deal with Vince Beltrami and the teachers union? They're going to raise holy hell.
I don't think he's going to have a choice if we keep down this path we're doing right now with the price of oil is $48 a barrel this morning. So he won't have a choice. If for example, somebody could say, here's a school choice option, Governor. Let's say it costs $10,000. Let's be, underestimate the cost of educating a child in the public school system. And let's have $5,000 of that dollars go to the parents of a child to pick a choice school.
Right.
That child leaves the public school. The public school that child leaves gets $2,500.
Yeah.
And the state keeps $2,500.
And they don't have to educate the kid anymore.
That's correct. There's no cost to educate that child.
Yeah.
It's a win-win-win.
Right.
The state reduces the cost of educating that child by 25%.
Yes.
The school district gets to keep 25% of that money, and the child's parents get to pick the best education fit for their child.
Right.
Now, I don't know who can be against that.
Well, it's an absolute no-brainer. There's no doubt about it. Let me ask you a question, Dave. Why do we have 400 people working for the State Department of Education? What do these people do?
Well, you have to watch your terms very closely. We have to use the term, why do we have 400 people employed in the Department of Education? When the Commissioner Hanley was asked that question where in the paper the other day where he had to cut 5% of his budget, he said 5% of my budget would be my entire staff. So what the Department of Education really does is they just process paper, shuffle paper, give out money. They just process money and give it to the different districts and figure out who's going to get how much. They allocate the federal dollars, the state dollars.
We need 400 people for that?
Well, I'll be honest with you. After watching what they didn't do with No Child Left Behind, I'm not so sure they're really holding the school districts accountable as they should. It seems to be a cartel. No, we don't need 400 people. I don't know. You get Commissioner Hanley on and ask him.
Yeah, we will definitely do that, Dave.
Do.
Thank you, man. I appreciate your phone call. 569-1080, 569-1080. Dan Fagan here, KOAN, KVNT. The time currently 8:44. Plenty of snow coming our way. 8:47 in the morning. Dan Fagan here on KOAN, KVNT. Our number 569-1080. 569-1080. That's how you get in touch with us. Email me, danfaganshow@icloud.com. 10 degrees in Anchorage right now. 3 in Palmer, 0 in Wasilla. Eagle River 9, Girdwood 18. Lots of snow coming our way late this afternoon, they say. Could be up to 13 inches starting this afternoon through Saturday morning. 569-1080. 569-1080. I want to tell you about my friend Mike Daniels over at Country Financial. Country Financial. They've been helping Alaskans get to a worry-free retirement for many years now. They have 13 locations in Alaska, 5 in the Valley, 5 out here in Anchorage. You sit down with a country representative, you're going to realize 5 minutes into the meeting, wow, this was a good idea. Go see the folks at Country Financial, Mike Daniels and his team. They will impress you. They will dazzle you on their knowledge of financial planning. Here's the number, 866-COUNTRY, 866-COUNTRY, Country Financial. Our number, 569-1080, 569-1080. Pat, you're on.
Dan, good morning. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I can hardly stand it. Hey, just a little insight under the heading of be careful what you ask for. Most of the wages paid to those 400 people are federal dollars. And the state and some of the constituents have been so concerned about the output of Alaska schools over the years that the call has been to reduce the budget, and that's driven the general fund support of that department very, very low. It's relatively low. So I asked you if you're in a program that was demanded by the constituency, whether that was school lunches or Title I, that people who live and work here have demanded from the school districts in order to take care of their kids. If your wages, as you sit at your desk in Juneau or Anchorage, come from the federal coffer, who do you think you serve? So it's a little tricky when we ask, hey, cut the budget, get rid of the general funds out of there. We might be pushing the department in the wrong direction. Just a thought.
So the federal, do you have any idea, Pat, what percentage of the State Department of Education is paid for by federal dollars? Is it a very high percentage?
It's very high. I'm gonna take a guess here. Somebody could tell me I'm wrong, but it's 80% or north of 80%.
So most of what they do is to make sure that state districts comply with federal regs.
That's part of it. There are federal programs that flow cash directly to school districts, and the oversight falls to the Department of Education and Early Development, so they get some money for oversight. But also there are some programs that are sponsored by the Department of Education and Early Development where the money flows through them out to the districts. And then, of course, there's something we're all concerned about is our school districts using the general funds that flow to them to teach children being appropriately used. And there's a significant amount of effort there. I think that's probably the highest value general fund wages that we pay in that department.
To make sure that the school districts use the money properly.
Yeah, the state money at least. If the federal programs tend to fund the oversight on their own.
Yeah. So it's an oversight department. It's a department to make it so we don't trust the school districts to do the right thing. That's why we need the 400 people.
No comment. There are a lot of good people in the system, but human nature being what it is, there are always incentives to maybe lose sight of the big goal. But there are a lot of great teachers out there. I know a lot of them. Married to one that works in an alternative program who puts in far more hours than are on her contract. And I have a son who teaches in a private school for a fraction of what he could get paid in a public school. So I'm a little bit close to it and seeing good things and seeing bad things. I hate to use a broad brush.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, when Carol Como asked me to sit on some kind of committee a while back, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and we were tasked, this committee was, with finding savings in the Department of Administration. And so many of the things that we ran into was, well, the feds require that, the feds require that, the feds require that. And my question to her was, well, why do we take federal money? And wouldn't we? How would it end up in the end? And she said it probably would be a wash, but she felt like a lot of the federal programs actually were beneficial.
There are some out there, school lunch programs that the constituency demands. When we talk about budget cuts, every dollar is very personal, particularly in a state like Alaska. So those are the tough conversations that we have to be willing to have, because it'll probably affect all of us to one degree or another. I kind of laughed when I had a good friend who was, independence, that's not how we do it outside. And I saw him working on a construction project funded 100% by federal and state money. And I pointed that out to him, and I thought he was going to pop a gasket.
Yeah. Interesting, Pat. I appreciate the enlightenment on that.
Sure.
Thank you so much. 569-1080, 569-1080. Well, I don't know. Government is just so big now on so many different levels. So you've got the Department of Education, which, and I appreciate Pat informing us on this, 80% paid by the feds or federal dollars, which of course is still taxpayer money, and still adding to the $17 trillion deficit in which we currently have in this debt, $17 trillion in debt, which our kids are going to have to pay back and their grandkids. So it's still taxpayer money. And I guess because we don't trust the school districts to do the right thing with the state money and part of the federal money they get, we have this big 400-member department to watch the school districts to make sure they do the right thing. And at some point, there's got to be trust, right? And what is it? Paul Harvey, the greatest journalist in American history, in my opinion, had his noon radio show on for years, decades. His famous saying was, self-government without self-discipline will never work. And if we don't ever trust anybody, I'm not saying we shouldn't have rules. I'm not saying we shouldn't have regulations. But if we operate under this premise that you can't trust anybody, so we've got to keep having layers and layers of bureaucracy to watch the other bureaucracy, it just becomes this massive Jabba the Hutt creature. And where do you draw the line? I don't know. And, you look at the government and its approach towards entrepreneurship. Clearly, there's a non-trust foundation there. We don't trust business owners to do anything right. So we layer them in bureaucracy and permitting and rules and regulations. You'll have one bureaucrat come in from one department and tell them to do this, and then another bureaucrat will come in from another department and say, no, do this. And it's a nightmare. This lack of trust, it's at the foundation of everything in this country, it seems like, when it comes to the government. We don't even trust our own government to do the right thing now. And I just think it's an unhealthy foundation. I remember when Sarah Palin launched her war on big oil. And she's, going to war with them, she's telling Exxon, don't let the door hit you on your way out and all this stuff. And I had Rick Meister, former mayor of Anchorage, and he looked at me with this deep voice and said, Dan, at some point, you can't partner with people you don't trust. At some point, there's got to be a foundation of trust. And I'm not saying you let the oil industry run wild. I'm not saying you let entrepreneurs run wild. I'm not saying you let school districts run wild. But at some point, somebody's got to trust somebody. Right? Big snow day today, late this afternoon. National Weather Service says we could get hit with as much as 13 inches between Thursday afternoon today and Saturday morning. 13 inches, that's a lot of inches. They expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 inches in Anchorage Bowl, 13 inches up on the hillside. It could be more in Anchorage. It could be 6 to 9 inches. They say there's these 2 big bands of snow coming through in about a 36-hour period. They say. How many times have they predicted snow? We get nary a peep. So we'll have to see. I'd like to see it. See some white stuff for cosmetic purposes, at least.